that some were hanging off the bottom of the new hive. So I added more room to the hive and I scooped the bees into their new home. A swarm of bees landed under this table, and I was asked to give the bees a new home. So I offered the bees a hive to move into, and I started scooping bees up with my hands. These bees were very gentle, unless you were a robber bee and you were searching for something to steal. Bees from stronger colonies will sometimes try to steal resources from weaker ones, but this robber bee found herself in a bee battle against a guard bee, and she wouldn't be trying to steal again. So I went back to scooping up bees and putting them into the new hive. With every handful of bees I scooped, I was searching for the queen. I spent a lot of time scooping and searching, but after I had scooped a lot of bees and searched through the entire colony, I realized that this was an unusual case of a queenless swarm. This colony would not survive without a queen, but luckily I had an extra one on me. So I gave the queen to the colony, and I gave the bees some smoke, and pretty soon the entire colony was rushing to join their queen. So I waited for the bees to move into the new hive, then I took the bees home, and it was another great day of saving the bees. Bees had been living in this backyard shed for many years. The shed was going to be torn down, but the homeowners wanted to save the bees, so they called me. Behind the wall of the shed, I found a huge hive of very gentle bees. So I removed my veil and I began removing the hive. The first part of the hive that I removed was full of honey, so I took a bite out of the honeycomb and it was so good. Then I started to carefully remove the rest of the hive. These huge pieces of comb were full of baby bees and also a lot of beautiful pollen that the bees use for food. Whatever I removed from the original hive went right into the new hive so that the bees would have everything they needed to survive. I put the pieces of comb into frames using rubber bands to keep it in place. Then I just kept removing the hive piece by piece while looking for the queen. After I removed all of the comb, I started scooping bees into the new hive. Then all of a sudden, I saw the queen on the side of the shed. So I put her in a clip to keep her safe, and I put her in the new hive. And pretty soon the entire colony was running into the new hive to be with their queen. It was getting dark and the bees needed more time to move in, so I left the hive overnight. When I returned the next morning, there were still some bees at the top of the shed, so I gave them some smoke and they began running into the new hive. Then I closed up the hive, I took them home, and it was another great day of saving the bees. Bees were living in this box and I was called to remove them, so I carefully lifted the lid and inside I found a giant hive. So I gave the bees some smoke and I started removing the comb. But the first piece fell to the ground, and because I tried to catch it, I got stung by a bee who was on the comb. So I removed the stinger from my skin and I got right back to work removing the hive. These bees had a ton of nectar, so I helped myself to a small bite of fresh honey, and it was warm and delicious. I saved all of the comb from the original hive for the bees to use in their new home, and after I was done removing all of the comb, it was time to get the bees into the new hive, so I started scooping them up with my hands. With every handful of bees I scooped, I was searching for the queen, but there were still a lot of bees hiding inside the box, so I took the lid off of the box, and all of a sudden, I saw the queen. So I put her in a clip to keep her safe, and I put her into the new hive. Then I used my smoker to guide the rest of the bees off the lid and into their new home. But there were so many bees that some were hanging off the bottom of the new hive, so I added more room to the hive and I scooped the bees into their new home. I waited for the bees to settle into the new hive, then I took them home, and it was another great day of saving the bees. A small swarm of bees had gathered on this tennis court and I was called to remove them. But once I got there, I realized this colony was in more trouble than it seemed. Their queen was dead, and because the bees were so loyal to their queen, they refused to leave her behind. They were still trying to attend to her and take care of her little bee body, so I put the queen's body in the new hive. It took the bees a few minutes to realize she had moved, but once they found her, they rushed to her and started to care for her in the new hive. So I waited for all the bees to get into their new hive, but since this colony was so small already, they needed more than a new queen to survive. They needed to join a new colony. So once I got the bees home, I put them in a standard beehive box, but I couldn't just put them with another colony and a new queen right away, or that could cause confusion, chaos, and fighting among the bees. So I put a layer of newspaper between them. The newspaper would keep the colony safe and separated while the bees got used to each other's scents. When I checked on the bees a few days later, the bees had chewed through the newspaper, and the two colonies had merged together to become one, and it was another great day of saving the bees.
Bees were living in this water meter and I was called to remove them, so I lifted the cover to reveal a beautiful hive. The bees hadn't been there for very long, but they had already built a lot of comb. The comb had eggs and baby bees, which let me know that the colony had a healthy queen. There was also pollen and nectar, but there was barely any honey yet. I put the comb into frames of the new hive so the bees would have everything they need after I moved them. I always wear protective gear when I need to, but these bees were very gentle and did not sting me. After I removed all of the comb, I started scooping bees into the new hive with my hands. As I was scooping bees, I noticed that the bees were going straight into the new hive, which let me know that the queen was probably already in there, so I gave the bees some smoke to move them a little quicker. Just like you and I do, bees move away from smoke, so as I used my smoker, the bees marched out of the old hive and into the new one to follow their queen. I waited for all the bees to get into their new hive, then I closed up the hive, loaded it into my truck, and it was another great